So today I thought I would do something a bit different for my YouTube audience. And instead of having the kind of like a structured video like my other ones, which take way too much to produce, I thought, why not just have a casual, unscripted video where I just ramble about all kind of stuff. And I'm gonna call this like a Morglog. If I feel like there's some topic or something that I want to talk about, I want to share with you, then I will just do it. But the point is that I don't need to be too strict on the kind of content that I share, and you guys let me know if you like this or not. If not, I can do something else. And if you do like, just leave a comment or anything really. So the topic for today that I want to talk about is the kind of like vibe coding that has been going around for quite a while now. And I feel like I wouldn't call it just like a trend, but it's definitely getting more popular. And lots of people that I've talked to that are either developers or are not developers, but just like want to get into development, they consider exploring the idea of vibe coding. And all kinds of companies have been pushing this approach. There's like the different implementations from like Google, Microsoft, but I've been trying Gemini from Google and a little bit of ChatGPT. And I thought I'll just like share a bit of thoughts on this, because I feel like a lot of the AI related conversation has been going on around the ethical implications of AI usage, both from a perspective of copyright and from a perspective of natural resources, electricity, power, environmental concerns, and all that kind of stuff. To be clear, I don't feel like I am equipped to talk about these topics in such nuanced detail, so I will avoid doing that, because if you feel like you want to hear me talk about ethical implications or environmental implications of AI, then this is not the right place. And I strongly recommend you find maybe like some other YouTuber or some other expert to talk about this stuff. I just want to talk about the practical application of AI in the context of coding and compare it a bit with the context of music and art. So the thing that I want to mention is that it's quite different going from art to coding. And I'm not trying to say that coding is not art, because there is definitely a creativity component to building your own application and finding a solution to problems. But the purpose of coding and writing software is not that, or at least usually it's not that of creating artistic expression. With music or art or like drawing, 3D modeling and all that stuff, you are expressing your own individuality as a person, and you want to share that with the world, and you want to put yourself out there, your emotions and your creativity. When you're making software, especially if you're doing this professionally, you want to achieve a purpose. Like you have a goal, you have a feature to implement, you want something to work. And the something itself, it doesn't matter how it's achieved, more or less, for a user perspective, at least, it doesn't matter how this is achieved as long as this is done and it provides a service to the users. For this purpose, I think there is some inevitability. Now that AI and LLM coding assistants are out there, it's going to happen that this will become mainstream, or it already is mainstream. And what people care about is what results you get with it. And to be clear, as a developer myself, I do not feel entirely comfortable with this thought, and it does put me in a perspective where I'm not sure what's going to happen in the future in the industry, but it is out there, and we have to acknowledge that. And if you're watching this and you are like a junior developer or somebody who's about to enter the industry, then I understand your concerns and I understand your uncertainty for the future, and I share those same thought. I understand I am in a more privileged position because I have been a software engineer for about a decade. I have a decent career, and I'm not trying to build expertise, and I'm not trying to put myself out there and get recognition for my skills as a junior developer or as a new grad might be in a position to. So my perspective is going to be a bit different, but if I can give you my advice, is to focus on the process and build expertise on how things work, rather than focus on the coding and the programming language aspect, unless your interests are in developing programming languages or compilers or things that are used by those LLMs. Because frankly speaking, going forward, we are not going to care much about your ability to write code. And I think that's going to inevitably happen if it hasn't already happened. But there are a lot of skills, both soft and hard skills, that a software developer is going to need that go way beyond what an LLM doing some rough or rudimental coding is able to do. To give you some examples, I've been playing around with Gemini to build some application, and most of my interactions have been from the perspective of, I don't want to say like a manager, but kind of like, if you're familiar with the way software development works from a customer and a developer, is that the customer defines the features or the user journeys or the things they want to get out of whatever commission they're giving you, and you as a developer are going to implement those features according to those specifications. So it's going to be some API, some point of entry where you say, I want to be able to do this, I want to be able to provide this data, this interface, this UI, and you click the button, something happens, and all that kind of stuff. And the developer just implements those features according to those specifications. Now that we have these LLM tools, the thing that changed is that the developer has become the person who defines the specifications, and the AI assistants are the ones that actually implement most of the features. So it doesn't mean that your contribution is going to be invalid. It just means that it's going to have to be shifting towards nudging the AI towards what you want to achieve according to some specifications. And there are going to be some degrees of expertise that you are going to need if you want to be able to do this job properly. I think it's very likely that the contents of this video are going to be very outdated, maybe in like 1 year, even less maybe. We cannot know the future, but we've seen lots of improvement from AI development in the context of how much they can reason around. And I don't want to say specifically reason, because it's not really intelligence from a perspective of AGI. Like it's not artificial intelligence, as in they're not conscious, but there's been progress in being able to let the AI steer itself towards achieving some solutions that are much more complex than just implement some code. And lately there have been agents like agentic programming, which is I hate as a word, where the AI is kind of aware of what it's doing itself, or like it tries to communicate with itself and navigates that actually operates the tools and the space around what it needs to achieve a goal. It's very likely then in a year what I'm saying here is going to be outdated. But the point is that there is still going to be a need for expertise, both in the verification that what the AI is doing is correct, and also from a perspective of being able to find the correct implementation that makes the most sense to you. There are a couple of pitfalls that I've come across with AI coding. So let me just talk in order. So the first one that I saw is sometimes the AI just shits itself. And I don't know how to say it in a more polite way, but basically for some reason it loses context, or it drops some semicolons or parentheses or something, and the code just breaks. These are fairly easy to spot and fairly easy to fix, and you can tell the AI to fix them for you, so you don't even have to do anything, but they exist. And especially if you are programming or like trying to develop a software using an unsafe language, like a dynamic language like Python or JavaScript, where you never know if something is broken until you actually execute it. If you're using those languages, it's going to be a problem. But if you use some very strict languages like Rust or Haskell or some other strongly typed and compiled languages that check that what you wrote is correct before executing it, then in that case, I believe that coding with an AI is actually going to be pretty productive. The other problem that I've experienced is that the AI tends to go for the most common implementation, which has two downsides. And this is not only for the programming aspect, but for any LLM conversations you have where you try to find some knowledge about something. The more broad or the more general population or a common myth kind of knowledge is the one that gets picked up by the AI the most. And often that is the major source of misleading and incorrect information, because most people who talk about generalities tend to make mistakes. And those mistakes tend to be propagated through a corpus of data that gets picked up by the AI as fact. And that's the mistake. But the more technical you go, the more in details you go, actually, the more likely it is, in my experience, that the AI is going to be correct. For this reason, if you're a beginner, you're likely going to be struggling doing simpler things, which are the ones that are going to have more mistakes. But if you are somebody who knows, like an expert, then those things are going to be less likely and you might get more out of your AI usage. And the other big mistake is that if you use some more dynamic API, like I've been writing some code in Rust with some libraries that are still heavily in active development, where the API is going to break month by month because the developers are still developing them. For example, the Bevy game engine or like the standard user interface library for Rust, those are still heavily developed and they change API a lot. In those contexts, the AI tends to use API that doesn't exist or function that has been removed or functions from a different version. And in that case, it can be very frustrating to fix those mistakes because if you don't know the libraries you're using, then the AI tends to flip-flop between two versions where you tell it, this line is incorrect, this line is correct. And it kind of like goes back and forth between versions and you get stuck in a loop. In those cases, you can try asking a different AI. I've been going back between Gemini and ChatGPT and they kind of correct each other, but it's not really reliable. And that's the other pitfall. So you really want to make sure that you know what you're doing, you know the libraries you're using, and you can figure out if the AI is writing code that actually compiles or not using ideally a strictly typed secure language. And then you do need some expertise in being able to know what you want. When you ask the AI to code something, they often write something in a very unoptimized way, or they go around doing things that might not be ideal for like memory management or performance. And if you need to do performance fine-tuning and figure out like memory leaks or something, the AI can be incredibly bad at this. Right now at least. And especially in my line of work, my main focus is performance improvement, and I do like debugging and tracing and stuff like that on my day job. I've noticed that this kind of job the AI cannot do well unless you prompt it properly. The other issue is that the AI tends to tell you things you want to hear, which means that if you ask it, can you find a mistake in this line of code, then it will often try to find the mistake that might not even exist. Or if you're wrong and you think you're dealing with a race condition, for example, where instead it's some other bug or something, and you tell the AI, can you find the race condition in this code? The AI will try to find it, even though it's not there. And it will likely find something completely unrelated, and it might try to fix something that doesn't exist. And that's where you end up with a huge mess of a problem. So that's kind of like the things you need to be careful when you deal with AI. But thinking about the future of development in general, I think the major issue that the development industry is going to have in maybe 10 years or 15 years, if we don't fix things, is the overall lack of expertise and lack of new hard skills development. What I mean with this is that the people who are now in school, in high school, or even like middle school, who are going to be entering the workforce in 10 years, they will be severely lacking the hard skills of recognizing how to debug things or how to look into how things work, including things like the file system structure of a program or basic programming concepts like a for loop or arrays or data structures, that kind of stuff where you imagine the AI takes care of that for you. New generations are going to struggle a lot with that. And to be fair, this is a common issue that has been portrayed in the last 20, 30, 40 years of development, where every time we develop a new technology that makes lives of developers easier, we do lose a lot of expertise. For example, we used to have assembly code or like machine language, and developer had to actually go into the registers and store the data. They had to know how to do floating point math. They had to know how to do register flipping and all that kind of stuff, like how to put variables on the stack and pop them out and call functions and all that kind of stuff. Where nowadays, well, even like 30 years ago, we created compilers that do this for us, and we get higher level languages like C or C++, where you actually get to write code that is not machine code. Then a bit later, we realized that we didn't want to deal with like memory safety or memory allocation or dynamic or static memory stack and heap and pointers and all that kind of stuff. And so we moved to languages like Java, C#, JavaScript, and dynamic languages like Python, where you don't have to worry about the layout of the memory. And we lost a lot of expertise from people who now became developers and they had no notion of what the memory layout was, or what a pointer even was. We kind of got it back with references and like an automatic resource allocation with like Rust and C++, but still most people who are professional developers might not be aware of the intricacies of the low-level CPU and memory layout. And then as we moved forward, we kind of moved away from the model of using a computer where a lot of our code runs in a browser. So we lost the OS API where we have to talk to the file system, where we have to talk to the monitor, we have to talk to the mouse and all that kind of stuff. Now we deal with like abstract interfaces. And the more high level you go, the more you're bound to lose some of that expertise from an educational perspective, from a pedagogical perspective. And so less expertise there will be when new people get into the industry. And with the AI, something like this is going to happen very likely. And the tipping point is going to be how independent the so-called like AI, LLMs, agents are going to be in 10 or 20 years. There is one world that I can imagine where we're going to need people who are able to deal with the actual infrastructure and training of AI, which means they are going to need the expertise to fix all the mistakes that the AI makes and train new models. But on the other hand, if you move into a world where the AI is fairly independent and can train itself, then we might not even need that in the first place. But still, there are going to be a need for specific expertise, like somebody who knows the individual formats of a file system or like a protocol, or something like the code used to move the platters on a disk, or like a firmware, like low-level firmware or something that is so extremely niche that even though you can use AI to help, you need to be developing new technology that the AI cannot know. And that's the key point. And companies are going to be struggling a lot with this in the next 10 years because there is going to be a lack of this kind of expertise. This said, I'm very impressed with the fact that I was able to write in more or less a weekend. Well, I didn't write it myself, but I was able to tell the AI to write some actual practical software for my needs that is fairly complicated. And I'm not going to say that I wouldn't have been able to do it myself, because most of the stuff is not complicated, but it required a level of knowledge that at the time of starting the project, I didn't have. And in that case, if I wanted to do it myself, I would have probably taken a couple of weeks just to study how things work. And the AI just did it for me. And I only had to research a few minor things just to know if it was bullshitting me or not. But what did I develop? Well, let me show you. It's actually faster if I show you, and then we can talk about it. What did I actually code or make using the AI? Well, I've always found as a Linux user that I wanted to make my own applications or my own tools, because every time I am missing a tool or a program or something, I've always just huddled together a bunch of scripts to make my life easier. And from my perspective, I never really cared about sharing them like a finished application. I have no interest in maintaining them. I have no interest in making them into a proper product. But at the same time, I find that they are useful for me, and specifically for me. But in case they were useful to other people as well, I want them to be able to use them, and I want to share it with them. There should be no expectations that I would ever maintain them or support them, but at the same time, they are out there and you should use them if you want to use them. And I think this is the perfect case for any AI coding assistant, where you can just tell it what you want and it spits it out to you. And I envision a future where we might end up being the owners of our own machines, of our own Linux computers, but letting the AI actually give us the tools that we need for our own very specific use cases. And it sounds kind of terrifying, but I imagine in the future, 10 people are going to have 10 very different experiences on their desktop, where all the applications that they are using are actually specifically tailored and created on the fly for them as they need them. And this has been the case for me right now, this year, this week, this day, where I ended up developing my own software that I needed. But what is it that I needed? So I like to play lots of games on different consoles. I have a Switch, I have an Xbox, I have a PS5, and I recently, if you see there in the background, I bought a Dreamcast, so I like to play some retro games. And but at the same time, I like the comfort of my PC, and I like to play them on PC. This makes it easier, especially if I play them in Japanese. It makes it easier for me to look up words in a dictionary. It makes it easier for me to share screenshots with friends or stream them on Twitch, which, by the way, I've started to regularly stream on Twitch. So if you want to drop me a follow, that would be great if you're interested into that kind of stuff. But on Windows, you have capture interfaces where you can easily use software created for gamers to do that. On Linux, most of the people I talk to that do this kind of stuff, they use software like MPV, which is like a video player, and they trick the video player into actually watching a live feed of their capture card, which looks like a webcam. And it requires a lot of fiddling and a lot of specific flags to make it performant. And I can show you my original script that I had. I think it's this one. So this is a script that I used to have, and this is like a shell script that basically what it does is it hooks into the video feed of the capture card and loads the audio and gives it to me as a game feed. But I wasn't happy with this because it's very brittle and it doesn't look very good. So I decided, why not just ask the AI to take that script and turn it into a proper application. So I'll show you exactly what I mean. So I created this application here, which is like it has a simple interface. You can select which USB device you're listening to. You have the video device, the audio interface, and when you start the stream, there you go. I have my switch running to the capture card, and I can move around. There is audio, and I have my game here. As you can see, it works just fine, and there's like no input latency. And I can put it full screen, and now I can display my Switch games on my PC. That's like this. But the interesting thing is that, as you can see here, I implemented a bunch of CRT filters for retro style gaming because, as I said, I have my Dreamcast back there. And if we change into the feed for the Dreamcast, here we have my Skies of Arcadia, or Eternal Arcadia as it's called in the Japanese version, running on my original Dreamcast over there. And normally it would look like this, right? And it's like a very kind of washed out perspective. And I just implemented my own CRT shaders. And let me tell you, I know absolutely nothing about CRT shaders or shaders in general. I've never coded a single shader in my life. But what I was able to do was talk to the AI and ask it to implement the shader for me. And it simply did that. There's been a lot of back and forth because it doesn't do exactly what I ask it to do all the time. And there's a bunch of bugs here and there. Still, eventually we got something working, and this is the result. How long did it take me? Maybe like a day, plus a bunch of extra fixes here and there. But it works, and now I can use it for myself, and I have no expectations to actually have other people use it for me, but I can use it for myself. I'll be linking it in my video down below in the description, so if you're interested, you can actually check it out. How many lines of code did I write for this? Maybe a couple just for the README file and alert boxes and stuff. But yeah, I didn't really write any logic. I just told the AI to do it for me, and it just did it. And to me, this is incredibly empowering, but also scary at the same time. So there you have it. That's all I have to show for today. And I know this has been a very weird video maybe. And if you like it, and if you manage to stick to it all the way through the end, then I'm very thankful and I appreciate it. Feel free to leave a comment or a like, and maybe even subscribe if you haven't yet. I also link my Twitch channel in the video description, so if you want to catch me live, then we can have a chat. But the thing is, I really want to know if this kind of content is interesting to people or not. If it is, then I will be making more of this. If not, then we can pivot to something else. But anyway, this is all I have to show for today. And as always, thank you for watching. This was the Morg Angle, and I'll see you next time. Ciao.